on there?
Yep. So it was twisting the differential the wrong direction. Because this is angled. So I'm pretty sure the picture is from out. Let's go. It's not lined up. It's the big ratchet. To 100 foot-pounds. If I can get the torque wrench in there. Here, pull on that. Okay. Locate the differential drop bracket hardware drivers. So we had to take that differential back out because we have to put the steering box up first, even though the instructions don't talk about that. So we're putting those bolts in now. And then we'll put the differential back up. Here's where I realized the bracket's on backwards and I was frustrated about not being able to use a ratchet to take it off. So now we got the 2 bolts and the 1 bolt for the differential mounting. The differential's over there, so we're gonna stick it up there now. I can't really record this because we need all 4 hands. So our bracket pushes over this way whenever it goes up there and hits on this little boss. So we're gonna cut this boss off. Here, Bruce. So hold that trigger on full throttle as long as you can.
Okay.
Because it's really fun.
You're probably done with it now?
I hope so. Once you get the transmission or the differential up there, put the U-bolt on, and I had to bend it a little in the vise to get it to go in the holes properly, and then I think you just have to tighten it with a ratchet or a hinge wrench. Lots of fun. This other side's gonna be really fun.
This one's a revision to the SOP. I guess they don't even care about the documentation that they send.
Put the U-bolt up in here when you get the differential up in place. Now we're gonna start taking off the 3 bolts here to put the mount on. Forgot to film this. Put the front cross piece up and use the original fasteners to hold it in place. It just takes the 2 bolts, with the nuts on the back. Fabtech facing forward, the front of the car, and looks good. And then we got the bolts out, and we're putting the mount onto the differential. Oh wait, we're supposed to discard those the original hardware and use the hardware that they provided. Beautiful. I think it's a 17, but maybe a 16. But most likely 17 since nobody uses 16. Now we're putting the drive shaft back in with the 11mm bolts. Now we'll put the all 3 nuts on. We got the nut on the front cross piece. So looking good. Make sure you put the washer on the head of the bolt before you put the bolts in, because it's not fun having to take all 3 of these bolts back out to put a washer on there. And then make sure you put the washers on the nut sides also. So for the cross member, you put some 7/16 bolts in the front and a 1/2-inch bolt in the back, but it's gonna be fun getting the nut up in there. And they go off to the side as they're protecting the differential. So we just gotta hold this up there and so the front bolts go on like this. So we got the cross member bolted up tight. We got the rear cross member, the skid plate bolted up tight. We got the rear cross member bolted up tight. Now we're tightening the front cross member. So I'm going to put the control arm back on using the stock hardware. The short one goes in the front, the long one goes in the back. This is the driver's side. So on the control arm, the pin goes down and the hardware goes in from the front. I think that's how I want it anyways. That's a little, maybe that's why they said leave it loose, because it's a little tight.
I can fit one arm. I cannot fit
Just needs a little persuasion. These little washers have to go in there. I do that. So take the nuts, the bolts out of the original knuckle using a 15mm socket, and then put the new knuckle on. The driver's side has a D in the part number cast into it. The passenger side has a P. Make sure the steering arm is forward so it hits to the steering correctly, and then tighten up the nuts when you're done. So now we'll put the axle back on using the stock 15mm bolts. Okay, we'll continue putting axle on using the bolts. Then they provide a spacer that goes on there, but it's probably going to be hard to keep on there because it falls right off. Oops, got to recap. Put the shocks in with the shock offset toward the back. Notice they're shorter on the back and longer on the front. So the shock is to the back, and use 3 15mm bolts down from up above and tighten them up to the specified torque. So you put the shock into it with the bolt going down 16mm on top and 17 on the bottom. It's a little, must be standard. You might have to twist this with the screwdriver a little bit to get it to line up, or knock on here with a rubber hand. Now we'll put the knuckle on. If I can find the nut, there it is. And I have to put this in somehow at the same time while keeping this on. So I'd probably need multiple hands for this. Because this is heavy.
This one. With the full joint.
Yeah.
Nope. It's not.
I think for this part we need the jack to jack the arm up so we can put the upper control on. Okay, go up. Yeah. It has to go all the way up. Keep going. I can pull it down to the hole now. Keep going.
Tell me when to stop.
Yeah, stop. Push down on that. Harder. Hold it. So it looks like you have to jack the control arm up, tighten up the lower ball joint bolt, and then have somebody push down on the upper control arm while you put the nut on. Don't remember what size nut it was. It was an 18 millimeter. Then we'll do up the steering arm. Yep. Give me one of those ball joints. So with the stock steering rod ends, it steers way out. So we gotta take those off and put the short ones that they provided on so that it brings the steering in a ways. So we gotta undo this lock nut on the back here. So I used a 1 inch, seems to have worked. I left it in the knuckle so that I could use that as leverage against it. Now you should just be able to spin the end off. this end we have to put a Zerk fitting in so that we get the green. That's my rag. I'm doing it to about the same location that it was before, so that hopefully it won't be too much out of alignment if it's close. And then tighten up the lock nut again. Now that appears to be going mostly straight now. So now we'll work on the other side. Almost forgot we gotta tighten up the lower control arms. Using an 18 and a 24. Take the ABS sensor out of the brackets and put it back in the hub.
Oh, you wanted to tie the bottom one, right?
Yeah. So you did this one?
No, I didn't.
So use the 1 inch.
Oh yeah, I did that.
This and then you swapped this.
Oh no. Yeah, I swapped it, but I didn't do anything again.
I didn't record that over here. We're gonna put the Zerk fitting in the New ball joint. It's a 7mm, maybe a 1/4 inch, depending on what it is. So don't over tighten it, because those can break off pretty easy. And then if you have a grease gun, you snap it on there and then pump it until it starts filling up the bulb. And then maybe you can pop it off of there. Ooh. But on this thing, you use a screwdriver to push in one side of it, like something, and then you just rip it out. Maybe like that, and then to get this little bracket there thing off, you just pop it apart like that, and then it comes off, and then it is less weight to drag around. And then for the other one, to get it off, you just pry right here and get it to open up. And then you can get that off of that. There's some zip ties provided, probably to tie some of that with. And then we're supposed to take this bracket off, but I don't know if I'm going to, because it's really hard. It says maybe cut it, but we'll leave it for now and see what happens. So now we'll put the rotor back on. We haven't tightened the axle bolt nut yet, but we'll do that. Make sure that little hole is lined up. So this hole here lines up with that hole that you just took the nut out of. So this has to line up with that. Tighten it more so it doesn't come undone. Okay. Now undo the caliper from back there. Undo the top one first. And take out those 2 bolts that are loose. So it goes, those bolts go in there, those 2 things go in there, so slide it on.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. Should just slide on. It slid off.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put the top one in. It's not quite in all the way. Push it in a little bit farther. Oh, I guess it does hit it, huh?
Yes.
Okay. So to get the caliper to fit, we had to trim this that went straight up, mostly back like that, so it's at an angle so that the caliper wouldn't hit it right there. With the gold bolts. But luckily, I get to put that one in by hand, because it's funny, they said to cut off the front part of this, but they didn't say anything about the back part, which interferes with this a little bit.
And what does that do?
This lowers the sway bar. So the sway bar would have been up too high, so then it would have been too short. Can you get me a 14mm end wrench?
End wrench. Where you
Might
got
be over
those?
there. They're all over the place. So of course the only option is to be blind and not see the little stamp in the metal there saying that this is the passenger side one. So it goes with the flat side out and the long side on the bottom toward the back, like that. I had it on opposite, so the long side was toward the front, but then the sway bar doesn't line up with the holes correctly. So make sure you put the one that ends with 2 on the driver's side and the one that ends with 3 on the passenger side. Not sure if you can see that on there. Right there. It ends in a 3. So, and then it came with some metric fasteners for up above and I can't find the 1.5" standard fasteners that came for the bottom. It drives me insane that they put standard fasteners in the kit for a truck that everywhere factory is metric. I'll have to put a bad note on their website if I can find it. But, so now I'm going to put these back up here with the fasteners somewhere, if I'm not zoomed in all the way. With those fasteners up here. So be right back. And then for the life of me, I can't find some 1.5" bolts to hold the sway bar up. So I found some almost 2" long ones that are out of something. And some lock nuts. I'll use those to hold the sway bar up. So for torquing the lug wrench, what I found online was torque it to 250 and then back it off 180 degrees and then torque it to 275. So the problem with this is it spins, so I like putting a screwdriver in the brakes so that it stops it. Didn't feel like 250. Okay, it's back on the ground on all fours. Oh, it's a little sunny over here. Okay, so one issue that we ran into with this kit is the dropped spindle and 17-inch wheels. So that little lower control ball joint, the bolt sticks down too far and gouged into the wheel, so then the front tires would not turn. We had to cut that off, so hopefully that doesn't cause any issues in the future. We also had to do some surgery on the front mud flaps because they caught whenever you turned and reversed. So we had to cut off the inner corner there. This was Bruce's first time off-road, so he was being really cautious even though the road was really smooth. He didn't want to damage anything. He wasn't sure or get stuck, so that's why he's going slow. So props to Bruce for getting out there and stepping out of his comfort zone and upgrading his truck and trying to have fun with it.